Hidden beneath the intricate swirls of medieval manuscripts lie secrets that have defied deciphering for centuries. Picture this: a scribe, hunched over a parchment by candlelight, deliberately weaving codes so clever that even today, hundreds of years later, modern scholars still can't crack them. These aren't just random scribbles or forgotten doodles. They're deliberate, sophisticated puzzles left behind by some of the most brilliant minds of the Middle Ages. And here's the thing: out of the countless codes scribes crafted, 30 remain unsolved, taunting historians and codebreakers alike with their elusive meanings. Why would these medieval writers go to such lengths to hide their messages? What were they protecting or revealing that demanded such secrecy? The medieval world was a place of wonder and danger, where knowledge was power, and power was often guarded fiercely. Scribes weren't just copyists, they were keepers of secrets, transmitters of hidden knowledge, and sometimes the only bridge between forbidden ideas and the world. Some of these coded passages might contain lost scientific theories, heretical religious texts, or even political plots too dangerous to write in plain sight. Others could be playful riddles, inside jokes between scholars, or elaborate hoaxes meant to baffle future generations. The mystery is part of the allure. Every stroke of ink, every strange symbol, every deliberate deviation from the norm is a breadcrumb left behind, waiting for someone, maybe even you, to finally connect the dots. But why do these unsolved codes still matter today? Because they're more than just historical curiosities. They're windows into the minds of people who lived in a world vastly different from ours. A world where writing itself was a form of magic, where words could be weapons, and where a single encoded message might change the course of history. Solving even one of these puzzles could rewrite what we know about the Middle Ages, revealing lost stories, forgotten innovations, or truths that were meant to stay hidden. And that's exactly what we're going to explore together: 30 of the most perplexing, tantalizing codes left behind by medieval scribes. From cryptic margin notes to entire manuscripts written in cipher, each one is a mystery begging to be solved. So let's step into the shadows of history and see if we can finally uncover what these scribes were trying to tell us. Of all the unsolved codes left behind by medieval scribes, none has captured the imagination quite like the Voynich Manuscript. Imagine stumbling upon a book filled with pages upon pages of an alphabet no one has ever seen, illustrations of plants that don't exist, and diagrams of celestial bodies that don't match any known astronomy. That's exactly what happened in 1912 when a Polish book dealer named Wilfred Voynich uncovered this enigmatic text in an Italian monastery. From the moment it surfaced, the manuscript became an obsession. Cryptographers, linguists, even military codebreakers have taken their best shot at cracking it, and yet, after more than a century, its secrets remain locked away. What makes the Voynich Manuscript so baffling isn't just its undecipherable script, it's the sheer strangeness of its contents. The pages are packed with delicate drawings of unidentifiable plants, their roots and leaves rendered in meticulous detail, but nothing that corresponds to any known species. There are sections filled with naked women bathing in interconnected pools of green liquid, astrological charts with unfamiliar constellations, and endless lines of text written in a flowing, elegant script that refuses to yield its meaning. Some researchers believe it's a medical or herbal text, others argue it's an elaborate hoax, and a few fringe theories even suggest it's of alien origin, though most scholars dismiss that idea outright. Theories about its true purpose are as varied as they are wild. Could it be a lost alchemical treatise encoding the secrets of turning base metals into gold? Might it be the work of a secretive religious sect hiding heretical beliefs in plain sight? Or was it crafted as an intellectual prank designed to frustrate future generations? One of the most compelling clues comes from carbon dating, which places the manuscript's creation between 1440 and 1440 squarely in the Middle Ages, yet its script and imagery feel eerily out of place. Even sophisticated computer algorithms trained on hundreds of languages have failed to detect any recognizable patterns, leaving experts to wonder if it's an entirely invented language, one meant to be understood by only a select few. What's remarkable is how many brilliant minds have been stumped by this book. World War II codebreakers who cracked Nazi ciphers couldn't make sense of it. Modern linguists armed with artificial intelligence have hit dead ends. Even the famed cryptographer William Friedman, who helped decipher Japanese codes during the war, spent decades trying and failing to unlock the Voynich's mysteries. Yet despite the setbacks, researchers haven't given up. New techniques in computational linguistics and pattern analysis keep the hope alive that someday, someone might finally read what this medieval scribe was trying to say. Until then, the Voynich Manuscript remains history's most tantalizing unsolved puzzle, a silent challenge from the past, daring us to unravel its secrets. While the Voynich Manuscript steals much of the spotlight, another enigmatic book from medieval Europe has baffled scholars just as stubbornly: the Rohonc Codex. Discovered in the early 19th century in Hungary, this cryptic manuscript is written entirely in an unknown script, accompanied by strange illustrations that seem to blend Christian iconography with pagan symbolism. Unlike anything else from its time, the codex features over 200 pages of dense, handwritten text using characters that resemble no known alphabet, some looking like twisted crosses, others like abstract animal forms. Even more puzzling are the drawings scattered throughout: knights in armor kneeling before what might be saints, mythical creatures tangled in vines, and celestial bodies hovering above scenes of battle and ritual. The mystery deepens when we consider where this book came from. Unlike the Voynich Manuscript, which has a traceable history, the Rohonc Codex appeared out of nowhere. It was donated to the Hungarian Academy of Sciences in 1838 by a count who claimed it had been in his family's possession for centuries, but beyond that, its origins are a blank slate. Some researchers argue it was crafted in medieval Transylvania, while others suggest it might be a much later creation meant to mimic antiquity. Carbon dating hasn't provided a clear answer either, leaving experts to debate whether it's a genuine medieval artifact or an elaborate forgery. Then there's the script itself. Linguists have tried everything, comparing it to ancient runes, early Hungarian writing systems, even distant languages like Brahmi or Old Turkic, but nothing matches. The symbols appear to follow grammatical patterns, suggesting a real language rather than random nonsense, yet no one has managed to piece together even a single coherent sentence. Some theorize it's a cipher based on Hungarian or Latin, while others believe it's an entirely invented script, possibly tied to secret religious practices. One controversial study even proposed that the text is a form of Proto-Hungarian, predating the earliest known records of the language, but without definitive proof, the theory remains speculative. What makes the Rohonc Codex especially fascinating are the glimpses of folklore woven into its pages. The illustrations hint at stories lost to time, figures that could be heroes from Slavic or Magyar legends, symbols that might represent forgotten gods or cosmic beliefs. Could this manuscript be a sacred text from a heretical sect, preserving teachings too dangerous to write openly? Or is it a medieval storyteller's notebook filled with tales meant to be performed rather than read? The truth might never be uncovered, but that hasn't stopped historians from trying. Unlike the Voynich, which resists all attempts at translation, the Rohonc Codex occasionally teases scholars with what seem like decipherable fragments. A repeated symbol here, a familiar motif there, only to slip back into impenetrable mystery. Perhaps the most compelling question isn't just what the Codex says, but why it was made in the first place. In a world where literacy was rare and books were precious, someone went to extraordinary lengths to create a volume no one could read. Was it meant to conceal knowledge, to test the worthy, or simply to confound? Until someone cracks its code, the Rohonc Codex remains a haunting whisper from the past, one that refuses to give up its secrets. Buried deep in the hills of Virginia, hidden beneath layers of dirt and decades of obsession, lies a treasure that may or may not exist, all because of 3 cryptic pages known as the Beale Ciphers. Picture this: in 1822, a man named Thomas Jefferson Beale supposedly left an iron box with a local innkeeper containing 3 encoded letters. One revealed the location of a fortune in gold and silver, another described the treasure itself, the third listed the names of the rightful owners. Then Beale vanished, leaving behind only a riddle wrapped in ink and numbers. The kicker: only the second cipher has ever been cracked, a feat accomplished using the Declaration of Independence as the key. The rest, they've resisted every attempt, turning this puzzle into the ultimate treasure hunter's white whale. What makes the Beale Ciphers so tantalizing isn't just the promise of riches, it's the sheer elegance of their design. The cracked cipher, known as Beale 2, works like this. Each number corresponds to a word in the Declaration of Independence. Take the first letter of that word, string them together, and suddenly, you're reading a message about vaults filled with silver and gold buried in Bedford County, Virginia. But here's the catch: the other 2 ciphers refuse to bend to the same method. Treasure hunters have tried everything, substituting other historical documents, inventing complex number theories, even using advanced computer algorithms, but the codes might as well be written in stone. The mystery only thickens when you dig into the story's gaps. Who was Thomas Jefferson Beale? No records of him exist outside the ciphers and the letters he supposedly left. Was he a lone adventurer, a pseudonym for a group of conspirators, or even a fictional character invented to sell a pamphlet? The only source for the entire tale is an 1885 pamphlet published by the innkeeper's friend James Ward, who claimed to have spent years trying and failing to crack the codes himself. Skeptics argue the whole thing might be an elaborate hoax, a 19th-century viral marketing scheme to drum up interest in Ward's publication. Yet the cracked cipher's specificity, down to the weight of the treasure and the names of heirs, keeps hope alive that there's more to uncover. What's fascinating is how the Beale Ciphers have turned into a cultural phenomenon. Over the years, everyone from amateur sleuths to professional cryptographers has taken a swing at them. Some claim to have found clues in Masonic symbolism or Thomas Jefferson's personal papers. Others insist the treasure was dug up long ago, its secret kept by a tight-lipped few. The land where the hoard might be buried has been dug up so many times it looks like Swiss cheese, yet no one's ever found a single gold coin. And that's the thing about unsolved codes: they're not just about the answer. They're about the hunt. The Beale Ciphers have become a mirror, reflecting our obsession with hidden knowledge and the thrill of the unsolved. Whether the treasure exists or not, the real prize might be the centuries of curiosity they've ignited. So why does this particular cipher still captivate us? Maybe it's the romance of the Wild West era it evokes, or the democratic idea that anyone with a sharp enough mind could stumble upon a fortune. Or perhaps it's the lingering question: if one cipher fell, why haven't the others? Until someone cracks them, if they can be cracked at all, the Beale Ciphers will remain the ultimate what if, a puzzle wrapped in a legend, buried in a mystery. Among the great unsolved ciphers of history, few are as deceptively simple and endlessly frustrating as the Dorabella Cipher. In July 1897, the renowned British composer Edward Elgar sent a peculiar letter to a young friend named Dora Penny. At first glance, it looked like a playful collection of swooping loops and flourishes, almost like musical notation turned into abstract art. But these 87 curious symbols weren't mere doodles. They were a deliberate cipher, and despite Elgar's reputation as a master of puzzles, no one has ever definitively cracked what they mean. What makes this code so maddening isn't its complexity, but its brevity. With so few characters to analyze, cryptographers are left chasing shadows, grasping at theories that slip away like mist. Elgar's love of encryption was no secret. He embedded ciphers in his musical compositions, signed letters in code, and even left behind an unpublished manuscript teasingly titled The Enigma Variation, a nod to his fascination with hidden messages. The Dorabella Cipher feels like a natural extension of that obsession, but with a personal twist. Dora Penny wasn't just any acquaintance, she was a muse, the lively young woman who inspired the playful Dorabella movement in his Enigma variations. Was this cipher a musical inside joke, a love note, or something darker? Theories abound. Some believe it's a whimsical riddle, reflecting the flirtatious banter between Elgar and his much younger friend. Others argue it could conceal a confession or a secret he dared not write plainly. The cipher's design only deepens the intrigue. The symbols resemble a hybrid of shorthand and musical notation, a style Elgar would have known well. He studied cryptography as a hobby, even exchanging coded letters with other enthusiasts. Yet, unlike his other ciphers, which often played with letter substitution, the Dorabella's swirls resist familiar patterns. Early attempts assumed it was a simple alphabet cipher, assigning letters to each symbol, but when decrypted, the results were gibberish. Later analysts wondered if it might be a polyalphabetic cipher, where multiple substitution rules shift throughout the text. Still, nothing coherent emerged. The most tantalizing clue, Elgar left behind a handwritten key for a different cipher, sparking hope that it might unlock Dorabella too. But after a century of testing, no luck. What's especially fascinating is how the cipher's brevity defies modern tools. Supercomputers can crunch millions of permutations, but with so few symbols, statistical analysis falls short. Without repeating patterns or enough text to establish context, even artificial intelligence hits a wall. It's a paradox: the shorter the cipher, the harder it is to break. Imagine trying to solve a crossword puzzle with only 3 clues. Every guess could technically fit, but which one is right? That's the Dorabella's curse. Yet the cipher's enduring allure lies in its intimacy. This wasn't a document meant for kings or spies. It was a private message between friends. Perhaps that's why it feels so urgent to solve it. Crack the Dorabella, and you might glimpse a fleeting moment between two people, a joke, a secret, or a whisper across time. Until then, those elegant loops remain frozen in mystery, a silent duet between composer and muse that the world hasn't yet learned to hear. Hidden among the rolling hills of Shugborough estate in England stands a monument that has fueled Grail legends and conspiracy theories for centuries. The Shepherd's Monument, an elegant 18th-century marble relief, features something peculiar, a sequence of 10 letters carved into its surface, DOUOSV. At first glance, it looks like random gibberish, but this inscription is anything but accidental. It's one of history's most enduring cryptographic puzzles, linked to everything from lost Templar treasure to the very cup Christ drank from at the Last Supper. And here's where it gets even more intriguing. The monument was commissioned by Admiral George Anson, a man whose voyages circled the globe and whose family had rumored ties to secret societies. Could this cipher be a map to something far grander than a simple garden ornament? The Anson connection is key to unraveling the mystery. George Anson wasn't just any aristocrat. He was a naval hero whose exploits in the 1740s made him a legend. After circumnavigating the globe and capturing Spanish treasure galleons, he returned to England with unimaginable wealth and whispers that he'd brought back more than just gold. Some speculate he stumbled upon Templar artifacts or Grail-related secrets during his travels, hiding clues in plain sight on his family estate. The Shepherd's Monument itself adds fuel to the fire. Its design mirrors Nicholas Powson's famous painting The Shepherds of Arcadia, which features a tomb inscribed with the phrase "Et in Arcadia ego," a line long associated with Grail lore. Coincidence unlikely. Then there's the cipher's stubborn resistance to decoding. Over the years, everyone from Victorian scholars to modern cryptographers has tried their hand at cracking it. One theory suggests it's a Latin dedication to a lost love, with the letters standing for De optimo ut omnis secreta veritatis aperianta verbo vitae manifesto, for the Almighty God, so that all the secrets of truth may be revealed by the word of manifest life. Others argue it's a Masonic code pointing to the Anson family's suspected ties to Freemasonry. More outlandish proposals claim it's a GPS-like coordinate system, guiding the worthy to Templar gold hidden beneath the estate. But no solution has ever gained universal acceptance. What makes the Shugborough inscription especially tantalizing is its cultural footprint. It's inspired treasure hunters, featured in Dan Brown-esque thrillers, and even drawn the attention of Britain's World War II codebreakers at Bletchley Park, who reportedly took a crack at it during downtime. Yet despite all this attention, the letters remain defiantly enigmatic. Perhaps that's the point. The best ciphers aren't just locks to be picked, they're mirrors, reflecting our endless fascination with the idea that somewhere just beyond reach lies a truth worth chasing. Until someone proves otherwise, the Shepherd's Monument keeps its secret whispering to visitors that history's greatest mysteries aren't always in the past, but carved in stone, waiting for the right mind to see them clearly. In the quiet coastal town of Somerton, Australia, a well-dressed man was found dead on the beach in 1948, slumped against a seawall with no identification and no signs of violence. The only clue, a scrap of paper tucked deep in his trouser pocket, torn from the final page of a medieval Persian poetry book, the words Tamam Shud, meaning ended or finished, printed on it. This wasn't just a random fragment, it was a deliberate breadcrumb leading to one of the most perplexing unsolved mysteries of the 20th century. The scrap traced back to a rare copy of the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam, a 12th century poetry collection revered for its musings on fate and mortality. But here's where it gets stranger. The book's owner, a local nurse, claimed she'd never seen the dead man before despite later revelations that he might have known her name. Even more chilling were the faint markings found inside the book's back cover, a series of letters jotted in pencil that resembled a coded message. Some sequences looked like groups of disconnected letters, WRGO, a B, a BD, while others seemed to follow a cryptic pattern. Was this a spy's cipher, a lover's final note, or something even darker? Theories spiral from Cold War intrigue to tragic romance. The timing is key. 1948 was the dawn of atomic espionage, and Australia was a hotspot for intelligence activity. The dead man, dubbed the Somerton Man, bore the physique of a trained athlete, with calf muscles suggesting frequent tiptoeing, a trait linked to dancers or, tellingly, spies who scaled walls. Forensic tests found his spleen enlarged, a possible sign of poisoning, yet no traces of toxins were ever confirmed. Then there's the nurse. Witnesses placed her near the scene, and decades later, a retired detective claimed she'd whispered the name Jeston to authorities, a pseudonym she'd allegedly used in classified circles. But the code itself remains the ultimate enigma. Cryptographers have tried every technique from simple substitution to Soviet-era spy ciphers, yet no solution fits perfectly. One tantalizing breakthrough came in 2022 when researchers claimed the letters mapped to chemical elements, spelling out a phrase about working and missing microfilm. But skepticism lingers. Without the original book or context, even the most elegant decryption could be a red herring. Perhaps the most haunting angle is the human one. In 2021, DNA extracted from the man's hair revealed possible relatives in the United States, reigniting questions about his identity. Was he a stranded operative, a heartbroken wanderer, or a man caught in a web larger than himself? The Tamam Shud Case defies categorization, part medieval poetry puzzle, part spy thriller, part unresolved tragedy. Until someone cracks that code, the Somerton Man's secret remains as closed as the book from which his final clue was torn. Imagine a sacred text so mysterious that even the people who wrapped it around a mummy likely had no idea what it said. That's the story of the Liber Linteus, the world's only surviving Etruscan book, written not on parchment or stone but on delicate linen. This ancient manuscript, dating back over 2,000 years, was somehow preserved in the most unlikely way, as bandages for an Egyptian mummy. Today, it sits in a Croatian museum, its faded ink whispering secrets from a civilization that shaped early Rome, yet left behind almost no literature of its own. The Etruscans were the cultural giants of pre-Roman Italy, masters of art, engineering, and divination. Their influence seeped into Roman religion, architecture, even the gladiatorial games. But despite their legacy, their language vanished, leaving behind only fragments. The Liber Linteus is the longest Etruscan text we have, 1,200 words spread across linen strips, yet it remains stubbornly untranslated. Why? Because Etruscan isn't just a dead language, it's a linguistic island unrelated to Latin or Greek, with no surviving descendants. Scholars can sound out the words, but without a bilingual Rosetta Stone, the meaning slips through their fingers like sand. What we do know makes the manuscript even more intriguing. The text is structured like a ritual calendar, filled with dates and repetitions that suggest religious ceremonies. Certain words reappear like refrains, possibly names of gods or invocations. Zan, Tinia, and Catha echo Etruscan deities, but without context, it's like hearing a song in a language you don't know. You catch the rhythm, but the melody stays out of reach. The linen itself adds another layer of mystery. Why write on fabric instead of durable bronze or clay? Some speculate it was meant to be carried in processions, a portable sacred text for ceremonies under the open sky. Then there's the mummy connection, an accidental act of preservation that feels almost poetic. In the 19th century, a Croatian nobleman bought an Egyptian sarcophagus as a souvenir. Only later did anyone notice the wrappings weren't ordinary bandages but inscribed linen. How an Etruscan manuscript ended up in Egypt is anyone's guess. Was it loot from Roman trade routes, a diplomat's curiosity? The irony is palpable. A text meant to honor Etruscan gods was repurposed to honor an Egyptian in death, its words literally buried for centuries. What makes the Liber Linteus vital to medieval studies is the shadow it casts. The Etruscans were the bridge between the classical and medieval worlds, their traditions absorbed by Rome and later Christendom. Deciphering this text could reveal lost rites, myths, or even early influences on European monastic practices. For now, though, the linen book keeps its silence, a ghost from a civilization that taught Rome how to rule, but couldn't teach us how to read its final words. Stretching across the Pacific Ocean, thousands of miles from any continent, lies the most isolated inhabited island on Earth, Easter Island. Famous for its towering moai statues, this remote land holds another secret even more elusive, the Rongorongo script. Carved into wooden tablets, these intricate glyphs are the only known writing system developed in Polynesia before European contact. But here's the puzzle: no one alive today can read them. The symbols, a mix of human figures, animals, and geometric shapes, stare back at researchers like silent echoes of a lost intellectual tradition. Were they sacred hymns, genealogies, or perhaps navigational charts used by medieval Polynesian voyagers who crossed vast oceans in wooden canoes? The answer vanished with the last literate Rapa Nui people, leaving behind a code that refuses to speak. What makes Rongorongo so fascinating is its sheer improbability. Most Pacific Island cultures relied on oral traditions, yet Easter Island's inhabitants somehow created a written language entirely independent of global influences. The glyphs themselves are a marvel, each one fluid and rhythmic, as if the act of carving was as ceremonial as the words themselves. Some tablets bear repetitive sequences, suggesting religious chants or cosmological cycles. Others show what might be calendars, tracking lunar months or the migration of seabirds. But without a living tradition or bilingual inscriptions, decipherment becomes a game of shadows. Early European missionaries reported seeing natives reading the tablets in the 19th century, but by then, colonialism and disease had already shattered the cultural chain that held the key. The physical state of the tablets adds another layer of mystery. Made from rare Toromiro wood, they survived against the odds in Easter Island's humid climate. Only 26 are known to exist today. Many were burned as pagan artifacts or repurposed as fishing reels, their inscriptions fading into oblivion. The ones that remain show signs of careful craftsmanship, with glyphs carved in alternating directions, a technique called reverse boustrophedon. Imagine writing one line left to right, then flipping the script upside down for the next, like a farmer plowing fields back and forth. This deliberate complexity hints at a system far more sophisticated than simple pictographs. Theories about Rongorongo's meaning range from the practical to the profound. Some scholars argue it's proto-writing, a mnemonic aid for priests rather than a true alphabet. Others see parallels with the Indus Valley script or even suggest a link to South American visitors, pointing to the sweet potatoes' prehistoric spread across the Pacific. The most tantalizing possibility that Rongorongo encodes the island's ecological collapse, a warning carved in wood as the last trees fell. Until someone cracks this code, we're left with a haunting question. Did the people of Easter Island write their own epitaph? And if so, what wisdom might we find in their final words? Long before medieval scribes dipped their quills into ink, an even older mystery was being pressed into clay: the Proto-Elamite script, a writing system so ancient it predates the pyramids. Unearthed in what's now southwestern Iran, these wedge-shaped marks are one of humanity's first attempts to record language, dating back over 5,000 years. Yet despite being contemporaries of early cuneiform, these symbols refuse to give up their secrets. What makes this script so stubborn? It's not just the ravages of time. Unlike its cousin cuneiform, which evolved into a decipherable system, Proto-Elamite seems to have vanished abruptly, leaving behind thousands of clay tablets covered in enigmatic strokes that look like bird tracks frozen in mud. Most of these tablets are mundane on the surface: receipts, inventories, records of livestock and grain, but that's precisely what makes them fascinating. These weren't royal decrees or epic poems, they were the receipts of everyday life, the bureaucratic pulse of an ancient society. Picture a bustling market in the city of Susa, scribes hunched over damp clay, tallying sheep and jars of oil with quick flicks of a stylus. The symbols they used were efficient, almost mathematical, suggesting a society that valued precision. Yet without a bilingual text or a clear descendant language, modern scholars are left trying to reconstruct a lost vocabulary from fragments. The script structure adds another layer to the puzzle. Some signs resemble early Sumerian cuneiform, hinting at cultural exchange between Mesopotamia and Elam. Others are wholly unique, possibly representing sounds or concepts specific to the Elamite language. But here's the twist: Proto-Elamite wasn't just proto-writing. It shows signs of sophistication, like numerical notations and even what might be grammatical markers. This wasn't just tallying, it was a system capable of complexity, perhaps even abstraction. So why did it disappear so completely? One theory suggests that as trade with Mesopotamia intensified, the simpler cuneiform system replaced it. Another posits that political upheaval severed the scribble tradition mid-stride, leaving later generations unable to read their ancestors' ledgers. What's tantalizing is how this ancient script might whisper to the medieval world. Centuries later, halfway across the globe, monastic scribes would face a similar challenge, encoding knowledge in symbols meant to be read by initiates, not outsiders. Was Proto-Elamite purely practical, or did some of its symbols carry hidden meanings, much like the coded margins of medieval manuscripts? The answer might lie in the handful of tablets that break from economic monotony, ones with unusual sequences or repeated symbols that could be incantations, names of gods, or even early attempts at literature. Until someone cracks this code, the voices of Elam's scribes remain silent, their words locked in clay, waiting for the right key to turn. Deep in the silt of the Indus River Valley, buried beneath layers of time and lost history, lies a script that has defied translation for over 4,000 years. The symbols of the ancient Harappan civilization, carefully etched onto seals, pottery, and copper tablets, are as elegant as they are enigmatic. Unlike the cuneiform of Mesopotamia or the hieroglyphs of Egypt, this Bronze Age writing system remains a locked door with no Rosetta Stone to provide the key. What's fascinating isn't just the script's resistance to decipherment, but the way its mysteries echo through time, whispering to medieval scribes who would later grapple with their own unsolved codes. The Harappan script is deceptively simple at first glance. Most inscriptions are short, rarely exceeding 5 or 6 symbols, often accompanied by vivid depictions of animals, unicorns, elephants, and bulls, each rendered with astonishing detail. But this brevity is part of the problem. With no long texts to analyze, linguists are left staring at fragments, like trying to reconstruct a novel from a handful of scattered sentences. Some argue it's a logo-syllabic system where symbols represent both words and sounds. Others believe it might be purely pictographic, a precursor to full writing. The absence of bilingual inscriptions or even a confirmed descendant language leaves researchers chasing shadows. What's remarkable is how this ancient puzzle connects to the medieval world. The Harappans, like later monastic scribes, seem to value secrecy. Their seals, possibly used for trade or ownership, bear symbols that might encode names, titles, or even esoteric knowledge. Could these Bronze Age craftsmen have been early cryptographers, embedding meaning in ways only initiates could understand? There's a tantalizing parallel here to the margin notes of medieval manuscripts, where scribes hid personal musings or heretical ideas in plain sight. Both traditions share a kinship in their deliberate ambiguity, writing not just to communicate but to conceal. Theories about the script's purpose are as diverse as they are debated. One school of thought suggests it was purely administrative, tracking goods in a society famed for its urban planning. Another proposes it had ritual significance, with symbols serving as sacred markers in religious ceremonies. The most provocative theory, that the script isn't language at all, but a non-linguistic system of notation, an ancient barcode rather than a true alphabet. If true, it would upend our understanding of how writing evolved, suggesting the Harappans took a path no other civilization followed. Yet the script's influence might have lingered longer than we realize. Centuries after the Indus Valley cities fell, trade routes still connected South Asia to the medieval world. Could fragments of Harappan symbolism have traveled west, inspiring early cryptographic traditions? It's a long shot, but consider this. The same obsession with encoded knowledge that drove medieval scribes to craft ciphers might have roots stretching back to these Bronze Age artisans. Until someone cracks the code, we'll never know for sure, but the possibility alone is a testament to humanity's timeless urge to write in riddles, ensuring that some messages are meant only for the worthy. Buried beneath the ruins of Crete's Minoan palace of Phaistos lies one of archaeology's most perplexing artifacts, a fired clay disc, roughly the size of a small plate, stamped on both sides with swirling spirals of symbols. Discovered in 1908 by Italian archaeologist Luigi Pernia, the Phaistos disc isn't just old, it's unique. Unlike Linear or B, the other undeciphered scripts of ancient Crete, this disc's symbols weren't carved or painted. They were pressed into the clay with individual stamps, making it the world's earliest known example of movable type, a technology that wouldn't reappear for another 3,000 years. But here's the catch: no one knows what it says. The 45 distinct symbols, from running men to tattooed heads, shields to bees, form 241 impressions that spiral toward the disc's center like a silent, ancient vinyl record waiting to be played. Theories about the disc's purpose are as varied as its symbols. Some scholars believe it's a religious hymn, its spirals mirroring the labyrinthine rituals of Minoan bull worship. Others argue it's a legal decree or even a primitive board game. The most compelling clue lies in the symbols themselves. A few, like the plumed head or gauntlet, resemble markings found on Minoan seals, hinting at a shared visual language. But the vast majority appear nowhere else in the archaeological record, leaving linguists to wonder, was this a secret code, a foreign diplomat's message, or an elaborate royal inventory system? The disk's physicality raises even more questions. Why use stamped symbols when writing by hand would have been faster? Was this a prototype for a printing revolution that died with its creator? Then there's the controversy. Skeptics like British linguist Jerome Eisenberg have loudly dismissed the disk as a 20th century hoax, a forger's attempt to cash in on the excitement around Crete's Minoan discoveries. They point to the disk's pristine condition, unlike broken linear tablets nearby, and the odd fact that Pernia never found similar artifacts, but scientific testing tells a different story. Thermoluminescence dating confirms the clay was fired in the 2nd millennium BCE, and the symbols show microscopic wear consistent with ancient tools. If it's a fake, it's an impossibly precise one, replicating Bronze Age techniques modern scholars didn't understand until decades later. What makes the Phaistos disk especially tantalizing is how it defies modern decryption methods. Without a bilingual text or even a clear language family to anchor it, cryptographers are adrift. Early attempts treated it like a syllabary, assigning sounds to each symbol. But the results were gibberish. Later analysts noticed repeating sequences, suggesting poetic meter or incantations, yet no known Minoan liturgy fits. Some radical theories propose the symbols aren't writing at all, but a form of proto-musical notation or astronomical calendar. The truth might be simpler. This could be a one-off experiment, a scribe's ambitious project that never caught on. Yet the disk's influence lingers. Its spiral structure echoes medieval Irish petroglyphs and even the cryptic Voynich Manuscript, hinting at a universal human urge to encode meaning in circular patterns. For modern codebreakers, it represents the ultimate challenge, a message from the dawn of European civilization, locked in clay, waiting for the right mind to twist the key. Until then, the Phaistos disk remains a silent witness to a lost world, its whispered secrets spinning outward, forever just beyond our grasp. Before the rise of ancient Greece's Linear B script, the earliest deciphered form of Greek, there was its enigmatic older sibling, Linear A. Carved into clay tablets by the Minoans of Crete over 3,500 years ago, this script is more than just a linguistic puzzle. It's a ghostly echo of a civilization that dominated the Mediterranean long before Athens or Sparta, a people who built labyrinthine palaces and traded saffron and bronze across the sea. Yet despite over a century of study, Linear remains stubbornly unreadable, its symbols whispering secrets we can't quite hear. What makes Linear so elusive isn't just the lack of a bilingual text, though that's certainly part of it. Unlike Linear B, which was cracked in the 1950s thanks to its connection to early Greek, Linear A's underlying language is a complete mystery. Some scholars believe it's an ancestor of Etruscan, others argue for a lost Anatolian tongue, and a few daring linguists suggest it might represent a language isolate, unrelated to anything else in the ancient world. Without this linguistic anchor, every attempt at translation becomes a shot in the dark. The script symbols are meticulously catalogued over 70 distinct signs representing syllables, alongside numerals and ideograms, but without knowing what sounds or concepts they correspond to, they might as well be abstract art. The tablets themselves offer frustratingly practical clues. Most are administrative records listing quantities of grain, oil, and livestock, with careful tallies inscribed beside them. This bureaucratic precision tells us the Minoans were masterful organizers, their economy thriving on meticulous record-keeping. But it also means we're missing the poetry, the myths, the personal letters that might have given context to these dry inventories. Imagine trying to reconstruct modern English solely from supermarket receipts. You'd grasp the numbers, but the soul of the language would stay hidden. Yet there's a tantalizing thread connecting Linear to the medieval world. Centuries after the Minoan palaces crumbled, Mediterranean trade networks revived, and with them the need for secrecy. Byzantine merchants used cipher systems to protect shipping manifests, while Venetian traders encoded sensitive deals in ledgers. Could some of these medieval cryptographic techniques have distant roots in Minoan practices? The parallels are speculative but provocative. Both cultures relied on maritime trade, both needed to safeguard commercial information, and both developed writing systems with layered meanings. Linear A's numerical notations, for instance, resemble later Mediterranean accounting methods, a hint that the mechanics of trade might transcend time even when the words themselves are lost. Perhaps the most intriguing clue lies in the Phaistos disk, another Cretan artifact covered in stamped symbols. Some of its glyphs bear a passing resemblance to Linear A signs, sparking theories that the disk might be a Rosetta Stone in disguise. But until someone finds a multilingual inscription or a bilingual scribe's notebook buried in the ruins of Knossos, Linear A will keep its secrets. For now, it stands as a silent bridge between the ancient and medieval worlds, a reminder that even in an age of information, some codes are content to stay broken. Tucked away in the vaults of Yale University lies a map that could rewrite history or expose one of the cleverest forgeries ever conceived. The Vinland map, a yellowed parchment depicting parts of North America labeled as Vinland, claims to show Norse exploration centuries before Columbus. But what's truly fascinating aren't just the coastlines, it's the cryptic runes and Latin annotations woven into its margins, sparking a debate that's raged for decades. Are these markings genuine medieval scribble work or an elaborate hoax designed to fool the modern world? At first glance, the map seems to corroborate Viking sagas describing Leif Erikson's voyages around the year 1000. The labeling of Greenland and Vinland, likely Newfoundland, aligns with archaeological evidence like the Elance Ox Meadows settlement, but the devil's in the details, literally. The runes scattered across the parchment are oddly placed, some crammed into margins as if added as an afterthought. Paleographers have noticed inconsistencies in the letter forms, with certain characters displaying strokes more typical of 20th century calligraphy than medieval penmanship. Even the Latin text contains quirks like grammatical errors a medieval scribe would have avoided. Then there's the ink. In 1965, researchers made a startling discovery. The map's lines contain traces of anatase, a titanium dioxide compound not used in inks until the 1920s. This seemed like a smoking gun until later studies suggested anatase could occur naturally in medieval pigments. The debate grew messier when microscopic analysis revealed the parchment itself dated to the 1400s, but the ink's chemical signature remained stubbornly ambiguous. Was this a genuine medieval document retouched by a modern hand, or a blank sheet from the right era manipulated into a forgery? The scribble techniques only deepen the mystery. Medieval maps rarely included such precise runic annotations. They were practical tools, not historical records. The Vinland map's blend of cartography and commentary feels more like a 19th century romanticized view of Vikings than an authentic medieval artifact. Yet some scholars point to the map's wormholes, which align perfectly with those in a genuine 15th century manuscript it was once bound with, suggesting it shared the same history. What's undeniable is the map's cultural impact. Whether real or fake, it's forced us to re-examine how medieval knowledge traveled and how easily modern biases can color our interpretation of the past. If genuine, it's a breathtaking snapshot of Norse cartography. If forged, it's a testament to the enduring power of the Viking legend, so compelling that someone risked everything to cement it in ink. Until science delivers a definitive verdict, the Vinland map remains a tantalizing what if. its runes whispering secrets we still can't quite decipher. Carved into the walls of ancient churches and etched onto crumbling Roman stones, one cryptic message appears again and again, a grid of 5 words that reads the same backward, forward, upward, and down: Satyr Aripo Tenet Opera Rotas. This is the Satyr Square, a palindrome so perfect it survived 2,000 years of history, popping up from Pompeii's ashes to medieval monasteries, yet no one fully understands why. At first glance, it seems like simple wordplay, a scribe's clever party trick, but dig deeper and you'll find layers of meaning that have fueled debates for centuries. Is this a hidden Christian prayer, a magical charm, or something even older, lost to time? The square's symmetry is its first marvel. No matter which direction you read it, the words form the same phrase, a feat that feels almost supernatural in an age before word processors. But what do the words mean? Satyr translates to sower or planter. Aripo is a mystery, possibly a name or a nonsense filler, while tenet means holds, opera translates to work, and rotas refers to wheels or cycles. Strung together, the most accepted reading is the sower Aripo holds the wheels with care. Poetic, yes, but why would this phrase appear everywhere from Syrian forts to English chapels? Christians in the Middle Ages saw divine handiwork here. Rearrange the letters and you can spell Pater Noster, Latin for Our Father, forming a cross with 2 leftover A's and O's, symbols for Alpha and Omega. To persecuted early believers, this might have been a covert creed, hidden in plain sight. Yet the square predates Christianity by centuries. The oldest example was found in Pompeii, scrawled on a column before Mount Vesuvius erupted. That discovery upended theories suggesting pagan origins. Some scholars tie it to Roman agricultural rites, where sower and wheels could symbolize cyclical harvest. Others argue it's a protective charm. Medieval sorcerers inscribed it on amulets to ward off illness, believing its perfect symmetry harnessed cosmic power. The real enigma is how one phrase could morph across cultures without losing its form. In 9th century Germany, it appeared in a medical text as a cure for rabies. In 12th century France, it was carved into cathedral walls to bless the stones. Even during World War II, Allied spies used it as an encryption key, proving its adaptability. Perhaps that's the square's true secret. It's a mirror, reflecting whatever meaning its viewers need. Faith for the devout, magic for the desperate, a puzzle for the curious. After 2 millennia, the Satyr Square remains a riddle wrapped in symmetry, proving that sometimes the most enduring codes aren't meant to be solved, just marveled at. Hidden between the gilded letters and vibrant illustrations of medieval Bibles, a second layer of meaning lurks: tiny symbols, odd doodles, and cryptic annotations crammed into the margins. These weren't mistakes or careless scribbles. They were deliberate marks left behind by scribes who spent years hunched over parchment, and some of these hidden additions have puzzled scholars for centuries. Take the famously bizarre Bible of the Devil, a 13th century manuscript where a knight jousts with a snail in the margins. At first glance, it seems like a whimsical distraction until you notice similar snails battling knights in dozens of other Bibles across Europe. Was this a running joke among scribes, a symbolic critique of social hierarchy, or something darker? Theories about these marginalia range from the playful to the profound. Some historians argue they're inside jokes, medieval memes passed between scribes to relieve the monotony of copying scripture. One recurring favorite shows monkeys mimicking human tasks like cooking or riding horses, likely poking fun at human folly. Others suggest deeper symbolism. The infamous knight vs. snail motif might represent the struggle between nobility and the slow, grinding forces of poverty. Then there are the downright bizarre additions: a naked archer shooting backwards, hybrid creatures with human heads and fish tails, even a monk kissing a mermaid. These weren't random doodles, they followed patterns that appeared across monasteries, hinting at a shared visual language. but not all marginalia was light-hearted. Some manuscripts contain strings of seemingly random letters or symbols tucked between verses, sequences that don't match any known cipher, yet appear too deliberate to be accidents. In the Winchester Bible, a cluster of odd glyphs resembles alchemical notation, sparking theories that scribes embedded forbidden knowledge among the Psalms. Another Bible in Austria hides tiny Greek letters beneath Latin text, possibly a covert nod to Byzantine theology during a time when such ideas could get you branded a heretic. Even more intriguing are the prickly annotations, dots and dashes some scholars believe were musical notation for secret chants, lost to time because no one alive remembers how to sing them. The most haunting examples blur the line between devotion and defiance. In one French manuscript, a scribe drew a detailed astrolabe next to a passage condemning astrology. Was this an act of quiet rebellion or a way to smuggle scientific knowledge into a religious text? Another Bible's margin features a delicate sketch of a beehive beside Proverbs' praise of hard work. But bees were also medieval symbols of resurrection, suggesting layers of hidden meaning. These scribes weren't just copyists, they were thinkers, tricksters, and perhaps even subversives, using the only canvas they had to question, critique, or encode truths too dangerous to speak aloud. What makes these marginal mysteries so compelling is their intimacy. Unlike grand royal decrees or theological treatises, they're personal whispers from individuals whose names we'll never know. Deciphering them is like overhearing a private joke or stumbling upon a diary entry in a sacred text. Every strange symbol, every incongruous doodle, is a flicker of humanity from a world often reduced to dates and battles. And that's the real secret hidden in the margins, not just codes or heresies, but the undeniable proof that even in the most rigid of times, people found ways to leave their mark, a tiny, defiant acts of creativity pressed between the lines of history. During the turbulent years of Elizabeth I's reign, when Catholic plots and Spanish invasions loomed over England, the Queen's survival often hinged on secrecy. Her most sensitive letters weren't just sealed with wax, they were scrambled into elaborate ciphers, a web of numbers and symbols designed to baffle prying eyes. Today, centuries later, cryptographers are still peeling back the layers of these encoded messages, uncovering a shadowy world of espionage, betrayal, and political brilliance that shaped the fate of a nation. One of the most tantalizing examples is the correspondence between Elizabeth and her spymaster, Sir Francis Walsingham. Their letters, filled with numeric substitutions and null characters, reveal a level of cryptographic sophistication that rivals modern encryption. Take the famous Phoenix letter, sent in 1584, where Elizabeth appears to discuss the doomed Mary, Queen of Scots, in veiled terms. At first glance, the document looks like a jumble of numbers until scholars realized each digit corresponds to a specific letter, with deliberate errors sprinkled in to mislead interceptors. Even then, some passages remain stubbornly opaque, suggesting additional layers of encryption lost to time. What makes Elizabeth's ciphers so formidable isn't just their complexity, but their adaptability. Unlike static codes, her team constantly evolved their systems. Some letters use homophonic substitution, where multiple symbols represent the same common letter, like E or T, to thwart frequency analysis. Others employ grills, physical masks laid over the page, revealing only select words to the intended recipient. One recently deciphered note to a French ally included a seemingly innocent postscript about the weather, which turned out to conceal battle plans when read through a cipher wheel. Modern breakthroughs have come from an unlikely alliance, historians collaborating with artificial intelligence. In 2022, a team at the University of London trained an algorithm on hundreds of Elizabethan documents, teaching it to recognize patterns invisible to the human eye. The AI flagged anomalies in previously dismissed letters, leading to the rediscovery of a lost cipher key tucked into the margins of a ledger in the British Library. Suddenly, a batch of indecipherable notes from 1588, the year of the Spanish Armada, unlocked, revealing Elizabeth's frantic negotiations with Dutch rebels. Yet some mysteries persist. A handful of letters, like those exchanged with her alchemist John Dee, resist even the most advanced decryption. Their symbols blend astrology, mathematics, and what some believe to be angelic script, a language Dee claimed was dictated to him by celestial beings. Were these the ramblings of a mystic, or a deliberately unbreakable code meant to shield state secrets under the guise of madness? The answer might lie in the Vatican's archives, where rumored copies of Elizabeth's black letters remain under lock and key. What emerges from these fragmented decryptions is a portrait of a ruler who understood the power of information and the art of controlling it. Every scrambled word was a calculated move in a high-stakes game where a single misstep could mean treason. Now, as scholars inch closer to reconstructing Elizabeth's hidden dialogue, we're not just cracking codes, we're eavesdropping on the whispers that built an empire. Could Shakespeare's plays hold secrets not even the Globe's audience suspected? That's the bold claim behind the Baconian ciphers, the theory that philosopher and scientist Francis Bacon embedded hidden messages in the bard's works using techniques borrowed from medieval steganography. At the heart of this idea is a tantalizing proposition that Bacon, a polymath obsessed with cryptography, wrote Shakespeare's texts himself, then laced them with encoded proof of his authorship. Supporters point to Bacon's own writings, where he detailed methods for concealing information in plain sight, from subtle changes in letter spacing to symbolic word choices. In his 1605 treatise, The Advancement of Learning, he even described a bilateral cipher, a precursor to binary code using A and B to represent dots and dashes. Could these very techniques be hiding in Hamlet's soliloquies or Sonnet 18? The most famous attempt to crack this code came in the late 19th century, when American journalist Ignatius Donnelly published The Great Cryptogram. Painstakingly analyzing the first folio, Donnelly claimed Bacon had embedded a confession in the comedy of errors by italicizing specific letters that spelled out phrases like "I, Bacon, wrote these plays." Modern scholars have largely dismissed Donnelly's findings as selective pattern, matching the literary equivalent of seeing faces in clouds. But the Baconian theory gained new life in the 20th century when cryptographer Elizabeth Wells Gallup alleged she'd uncovered a more sophisticated system. Bacon used two subtly different fonts in the folio, with slight variations in the letter A or T encoding entire words. Her decryption supposedly revealed political secrets about Queen Elizabeth's court, including explosive claims about her concealed heirs. Skeptics counter that these codes are artifacts of Renaissance printing quirks, not deliberate ciphers. Typesetting in Shakespeare's era was notoriously inconsistent. Letters wore down, ink smudged, and compositors often mixed fonts to fill lines. Even if Bacon had the technical means to embed such messages, why would he risk encoding them in works meant for public performance rather than hiding them in private manuscripts? More damningly, statistical analyses show the alleged patterns fall within random distribution, with no greater significance than flipping a coin. Yet the theory persists, fueled by enduring mysteries around Shakespeare's identity and Bacon's known fascination with secrecy. Perhaps the real allure isn't the codes themselves, but what they represent: the romantic idea that history's greatest literary treasure might still hold unseen layers waiting for the right key to turn. Whether truth or wishful thinking, the Baconian ciphers remind us that every generation projects its own obsessions onto the past, seeing patterns where there may only be parchment and ink. Amid the flickering candlelight of medieval workshops, where science blurred with magic, few artifacts capture the mystique of alchemy like the Ripley scrolls. These elaborate, vibrantly illustrated manuscripts, some stretching over 5 meters long, aren't just recipes for turning lead into gold. They're visual labyrinths packed with arcane symbols, mythical beasts, and cryptic verses that promise the ultimate prize, the Philosopher's Stone. Named after the 15th century alchemist George Ripley, these scrolls weave together poetry, prophecy, and intricate diagrams, forming a roadmap to enlightenment that only the initiated could follow. But here's the twist: Ripley himself may never have touched them. The earliest surviving copies date to the 16th century, suggesting the scrolls evolved as part of a living tradition, passed down and embellished by generations of seekers. At first glance, the scrolls resemble fantastical comic strips, serpents devouring their own tails, kings and queens dissolving in bubbling flasks, celestial dragons breathing fire into alembics. Every image is drenched in allegory. To the untrained eye, it's a surreal medieval art exhibition. To alchemists, each tableau held precise technical meaning. The green lion devouring the sun wasn't just a mythical creature. It symbolized raw primal matter dissolving in acid, a crucial step in purification. The recurring motif of a hermaphroditic figure, a representation of the perfect union of opposites, sulfur and mercury, believed to underlie all metals. Even the colors mattered. Gold ink didn't just signify wealth, it marked stages in the great work where base metals supposedly underwent spiritual metamorphosis. The text is even more enigmatic. Written in Middle English verse, the scrolls mix straightforward instructions with riddles worthy of the Sphinx. One passage describes the red man and his white wife, likely code for gold and silver in a chemical wedding. Another warns of the dragon that dies not except by its brother and sister, possibly referencing antimony and its volatile reactions. But interspersed with these practical clues are veiled spiritual directives. Make of man and woman a circle, a nod to the alchemist's own inner transformation. This duality, part lab manual, part mystic text, reflects alchemy's core belief that refining metals mirrored the soul's journey toward perfection. Tracing the scrolls' influence reveals their cultural reach. Copies circulated among Europe's elite, from the libraries of Holy Roman emperors to the secret cabinets of Elizabethan magus John Dee. Some scholars believe Shakespeare borrowed imagery from Ripley for The Tempest. Prospero's green-eyed monster speech echoes alchemical green lion symbolism. Even Isaac Newton owned a Ripley scroll, annotating its margins with feverish notes. Yet for all their fame, the scroll's ultimate purpose remains debated. Were they literal guides to transmutation or elaborate metaphors for personal enlightenment? The answer might lie in their adaptability. Like medieval Wikipedia, each copy was subtly altered by its scribe, some emphasizing Christian mysticism, others leaning into pagan astrology. What makes the Ripley scrolls truly timeless is their refusal to be pinned down. They're recipes without measurements, maps without keys, invitations to a quest where the journey matters more than the destination. Modern scientists have recreated their processes with mixed results. One team in the 1990s claimed to produce a ruby-red powder matching descriptions of the stone, though skeptics dismissed it as iron oxide. Perhaps that's the scroll's real lesson. In an age obsessed with quick answers, they remind us that some codes aren't meant to be cracked, only pondered, their symbols glowing like embers in the dark, promising secrets just beyond our grasp. In a dimly lit studio in 1981, Italian architect Luigi Serafini began crafting what would become one of the most bizarre books ever created, the Codex Seraphinianus. At first glance, its lavishly illustrated pages resemble a medieval encyclopedia, filled with intricate diagrams of impossible flora, floating cities, and creatures that defy biology. But the true enigma lies in its text, line after line of flowing, alien script that looks eerily similar to the undeciphered codes of ancient scribes. Unlike historical manuscripts, however, this isn't a relic of the past, it's a deliberate modern homage to the mystery of the unknown, a surrealist love letter to the unsolved ciphers that haunt our collective imagination. What sets the Codex apart is its audacious commitment to the illusion of meaning. Every page feels like it should make sense. Charts detail the life cycles of plants that bleed color, anatomical drawings dissect fish with human legs, and maps trace the streets of cities that spiral inward like seashells. The text, written in an alphabet of Serafini's invention, curves around these images with the confident rhythm of a real language. Linguists have analyzed it for decades, searching for patterns. Some claim to detect faint echoes of Romance languages or Slavic phonetics, but the truth is far simpler and more profound. Serafini himself admitted the writing has no translation. It's not a cipher waiting to be cracked. It's a mirror reflecting how we project meaning onto the incomprehensible, much like scholars straining to read the Voynich Manuscript. Yet the Codex shares uncanny parallels with genuine medieval mysteries. Its structure mimics the Liber Linteus, with sections that seem to catalogue fauna, astronomy, and even culinary practices, except here, the recipes involve dissolving clocks or harvesting light from the sky. The script's elegant flourishes recall the looping symbols of Rongorongo, while its chapter headings mirror the arcane organization of alchemical scrolls like Ripley's. Even its sheer physicality echoes ancient codices, the weight of the paper, the texture of the ink, all meticulously crafted to feel timeless. This isn't accidental. Serafini channeled the same obsessive energy as a medieval monk illuminating a Bible, blurring the line between art and artifact. The genius of the Codex lies in how it exposes our desperation to decode. Humans are pattern-seeking creatures. We can't resist assigning meaning, even when none exists. Medieval scribes hid secrets in plain sight, but Serafini flips the script. He offers the aesthetic of secrecy without the substance. When a 2,000-year-old tablet stumps linguists, we assume it's our failing. When the Codex resists reading, we confront the unsettling possibility that some languages were never meant to be understood. Perhaps that's why it fascinates us. In a world drowning in information, the Codex Seraphinianus is a rare sanctuary of mystery, a place where wonder doesn't require an answer. It's a testament to the enduring power of the unreadable proof that sometimes the most compelling codes aren't puzzles to solve, but doors to keep us dreaming. Off the fog-shrouded coast of Nova Scotia lies an island that sparked treasure hunts for over 2 centuries, Oak Island, home to one of the world's most enduring excavation puzzles. At the heart of the mystery is the so-called Money Pit, a deep, booby-trapped shaft where countless searchers have chased rumors of buried gold, only to be thwarted by flooding tunnels and cryptic markings. But the real intrigue begins with the carvings found deep underground, symbols etched into stone and wood that some believe point to medieval Templars as the pit's architects. These aren't random scratches, they're deliberate inscriptions, possibly a cipher left behind by warriors fleeing with sacred relics, or a cruel joke from a long-dead prankster. One of the most tantalizing discoveries came in 1803, when diggers uncovered a large flat stone at 90 feet down, its surface covered in strange glyphs. Witnesses described symbols resembling archaic runes, geometric shapes, and what might be Latin letters worn smooth by time. Some claimed the markings spelled out a distance 40 feet below, 2 million pounds lie buried, while others insisted it was a Masonic cipher or even a Templar distress signal. The stone vanished by the 20th century, leaving only sketches and conflicting accounts behind. But later excavations revealed more clues: oak logs branded with odd sigils, triangular stone markers arranged like celestial maps, and even a human hand carved into the tunnel walls, its fingers pointing toward a hidden chamber. The Templar connection isn't pure fantasy. Historical records suggest the order's surviving knights fled persecution after 1314, possibly with treasures from the Temple of Solomon. Some theorists trace their path to Scotland, then across the Atlantic, pointing to the pit's intricate design as proof. The layered flood tunnels mirror Templar engineering in Portugal, while the runes resemble Norse markings from medieval Greenland, a territory the order might have accessed. Even the island's name holds a clue. Oak was sacred to Druids, whose symbolism the Templars reportedly absorbed. Could this have been their emergency vault, a last refuge for relics like the Ark or the Holy Grail? The carvings might be the instruction manual if only we could read them. Modern attempts to decode the inscriptions have only deepened the mystery. Cryptographers tried matching the runes to medieval cipher alphabets, like the pigpen code used by Masons, but the fragments are too sparse for certainty. Others noticed parallels to 14th century naval logs, where symbols denoted safe harbors or dangerous tides. The most compelling theory comes from a 1976 analysis suggesting the markings form a shadow clock, aligning with solstice sun angles to reveal digging directions. Yet every interpretation crumbles under scrutiny, leaving a frustrating truth. Without the original stone or more intact samples, the code remains out of reach. What's undeniable is the pit's psychological grip. Whether Templar treasure or an elaborate 18th century hoax, the inscriptions tap into our deepest desires. The hope that history's greatest secrets aren't lost, just hidden, waiting for the right eyes to see them clearly. As drilling technology advances, new clues may yet emerge from the mud and brine. Until then, Oak Island's carvings stand as silent sentinels, guarding their riddles beneath layers of earth and legend. Deep within the vaults of ancient Zoroastrian temples, priests once guarded sacred texts with a cunning double defense, not just locks of iron, but layers of encryption designed to shield divine wisdom from profane eyes. These weren't simple substitutions or childish ciphers. The encryption methods woven into texts like the Decode and Bundahishan were marvels of medieval cryptography, blending linguistic sleight of hand with theological depth. At their core, these codes served a sacred purpose, to ensure that only those properly initiated into Zoroastrian mysteries could access the innermost teachings of Ahura Mazda, the wise lord. To the untrained, the words seemed ordinary Persian scripture, but to the enlightened they concealed a second, far more profound meaning, a hidden current of cosmic truth flowing beneath the surface. The first layer of encryption relied on hambandish, a technique where key terms were replaced with symbolic counterparts. Fire, a sacred element in Zoroastrianism, might be referred to as the shining hand or the unquenchable witness. These weren't arbitrary metaphors. Each substitution followed precise rules known only to priests, turning every passage into a theological puzzle. A verse praising the purity of flames could simultaneously encode instructions for ritual purification or astrological alignments critical for temple ceremonies. The duality was deliberate. Outsiders would see poetry while initiates decoded doctrine. Yet the true brilliance lay in the Gumanigan, a secondary cipher system woven into the very structure of the texts. Certain passages, when read aloud with alternate vowel sounds or rhythmic stresses, revealed entirely new phrases. Imagine a prayer that, when spoken with a lilt on every third syllable, suddenly quoted forbidden prophecies about the end of days. This wasn't just wordplay, it was acoustic encryption, a safeguard ensuring that even if written texts fell into enemy hands, their secrets couldn't be unlocked without oral tradition. The Sasanian Empire, which fiercely protected Zoroastrianism as its state religion, reportedly used these methods to communicate covert directives during wartime, embedding battle plans in hymns to avoid interception. What makes these ciphers extraordinary is their resilience. When Muslim conquerors overran Persia in the 7th century, Zoroastrian scholars disguised core teachings as folklore or medical advice using these very techniques. A seemingly innocuous recipe for herbal remedies might secretly preserve fire temple rituals, with ingredient lists doubling as coded steps for sacred rites. Modern scholars like Dr. Ali Jafari have spent decades reverse engineering these patterns, uncovering everything from lost creation myths to advanced ethical frameworks hidden in plain sight. The legacy of these cryptographic traditions stretches far beyond religion. Persian poets like Hafez borrowed Zoroastrian symbolic language, weaving layered meanings into their verse that delighted court audiences while evading censors. Even today, the principle lives on in cultures valuing discretion, proof that when knowledge is precious enough, humanity will always find ways to whisper it through time, leaving the unworthy hearing only silence. Hidden in the pages of medieval herbals, between sketches of mandrake roots and chamomile flowers, lies a secret language of healing, one that monks and physicians guarded as fiercely as any treasure. These weren't just straightforward descriptions of remedies. Scattered across manuscripts like the Tractatus de Herbis and Hortus Sanitatis, scribes left behind deliberately scrambled plant names, inverted preparation methods, and symbolic illustrations that concealed true uses from all but the initiated. Why would healers obscure knowledge meant to save lives? The answer lies in the delicate balance between medicine and power during the Middle Ages, where a single recipe could mean the difference between prosperity and persecution. Take the mysterious lulith plant, referenced in 12th century texts with warnings about its moon-drunk properties. At first glance, it appears to be fantasy until scholars realized the name was a cipher. Reversing the letters yields thilul, a near match for Atropa belladonna, the deadly nightshade. This wasn't a scribble error. By disguising the plant's identity, monks protected readers from accidental poisoning while reserving its potent pain-relieving doses for trained hands. Other codes were more elaborate. The Red Book of Hergest, a Welsh manuscript, describes a wound salve requiring dragon's blood, not the mythical creature's essence, but a coded term for resin from the Dracena tree, known only to apothecaries sworn to secrecy. The motives behind these herbal ciphers reveal a world where knowledge was currency. Monasteries controlled vast medicinal gardens, and their carefully guarded recipes granted influence over nobles and commoners alike. Disguising ingredients prevented rivals from replicating cures, ensuring a steady stream of patients and patronage. But there were darker reasons too. Certain plants, like ergot-infected rye used to induce labor, straddled the line between medicine and witchcraft. A cleric caught with such texts risked accusations of heresy. By encoding these entries as the grain that whispers to Eve, scribes could preserve life-saving knowledge without inviting the pyre. Modern breakthroughs have peeled back layers of these botanical riddles. In 2019, researchers at Cambridge used spectral imaging to uncover erased marginalia in a 15th century herbal, revealing original plant names beneath scribbled-over cipher text. Elsewhere, AI pattern recognition matched symbolic illustrations in Das Buch der Natur to precise chemical compounds, proving that the lion's tooth referred not to dandelions but to a specific preparation of opium poppy. Yet some mysteries endure. The Codex Voynich's botanical section, with its otherworldly plants and unreadable labels, remains a locked garden, its secrets still buried in ink. What makes these herbal codes timeless isn't just their cleverness, but their humanity. Behind every scrambled syllable was a healer's dilemma: how to share wisdom without sowing chaos. Today, as we digitize these manuscripts, we're not just cracking ciphers. We're relearning a language of caution and care, one that reminds us that sometimes the most powerful knowledge isn't meant to be spoken aloud, only whispered to those ready to listen. Among the shadowy figures of medieval alchemy, few names carry as much weight or mystery as Basil Valentine. Supposedly a 15th century Benedictine monk, this enigmatic scholar penned some of the most influential chemical treatises of his era, filled with vivid descriptions of antimony, acids, and metallic transformations. But here's the catch: Basil Valentine likely never existed. The name itself is a pseudonym, possibly coined by a collective of alchemists or a single brilliant mind hiding behind monastic anonymity. What remains, though, are his cryptic manuscripts, pages dense with encoded symbols that straddle the line between mystical ritual and groundbreaking science. To read them is to step into a world where chemistry and theology intertwined, where every flask and furnace held cosmic significance. Valentine's symbols weren't mere shorthand. They were a visual language designed to conceal as much as they revealed. Take his emblem for vitriol, a substance we now know as sulfuric acid. To the uninitiated, it resembled a serpent coiled around a cross, a biblical reference to Moses' bronze serpent, symbolizing healing through purification. But to fellow adepts, the serpent's number of coils might indicate distillation steps, while the cross hinted at the acidic crucible needed to break down base metals. Even more elaborate were his planetary sigils for metals. Gold wasn't just labeled, it bore the symbol of the sun, often nested inside concentric circles representing purification cycles. These weren't arbitrary choices. They reflected the alchemical belief that metals grew like living things in the earth, maturing from lead into gold under celestial influences, a poetic theory that, ironically, foreshadowed modern understanding of atomic stability. The real breakthrough came when later scientists began untangling Valentine's codes. In the 17th century, chemist Johann Thölder painstakingly decoded portions of the triumphal chariot of antimony, revealing practical methods for isolating metallic antimony, a crucial element in early medicine and metallurgy. Yet even Thölder admitted some notations defied explanation, like Valentine's green dragon, a symbol depicting a winged serpent devouring its tail. Was this a recipe for a copper compound or a metaphor for cyclical reactions? The ambiguity was deliberate. Alchemists like Valentine operated in dangerous times where sharing too much could invite accusations of heresy or theft. By cloaking their work in allegory, they ensured only the worthy or the persistent could replicate their discoveries. Valentine's influence rippled far beyond his era. His symbols evolved into the standardized notation of modern chemistry, with his triangular crucible emblem inspiring today's hazard icons. Even his riddles had purpose. When he wrote of the philosopher's stone as a red powder, some scholars now suspect he was describing iron oxide's catalytic properties, a concept centuries ahead of its time. Yet for all we've decoded, gaps remain. Pages of his 12 Keys manuscript contain diagrams of glassware with odd angular markings, possibly indicating pressure or temperature thresholds lost to history. Others speculate these are musical notations, hinting at vibrational methods for refining substances, an idea that resonates eerily with modern sonochemistry. What makes Valentine's codes timeless isn't just their scientific value, but their duality. They remind us that every epoch has its gatekeepers of knowledge, guarding truths in layers of symbolism. Whether crafted by a lone genius or a secretive order, these manuscripts challenge us to look deeper, not just at the symbols but at the minds that forged them. In Valentine's tangled glyphs, we see the birth of chemistry itself, half poetry, half precision, and wholly human in its quest to unravel the unknown. Rosslyn Chapel, nestled in the misty hills of Scotland, is more than just an architectural marvel. It's a canvas of stone carved with riddles that have confounded historians for centuries. From the moment you step inside, the walls seem to whisper secrets. Hundreds of intricate symbols, from geometric patterns to eerie faces, sprawl across the ceiling and pillars, defying easy explanation. But the most tantalizing enigma lies in a series of peculiar cubes dangling from the arches, each etched with a unique arrangement of lines and dots. Some claim these cubes hold musical notations, a medieval hymn frozen in stone. Others see star maps or alchemical codes. The truth, no one knows for sure, and that's what makes Rosslyn's graffiti one of history's most spellbinding unsolved ciphers. The musical theory gained traction when composer Stuart Mitchell proposed the cubes represented a harmonic sequence known as the Rosslyn motet. According to his interpretation, the patterns align with Chladni figures' visual representations of sound vibrations that, when translated into notes, reveal a haunting melody. Mitchell even reconstructed the piece, a celestial-sounding chant that feels ancient yet eerily timeless. But skeptics point out a glaring flaw. the cubes lack any clear indication of rhythm or scale, making the sheet music theory as speculative as it is poetic. Could the cubes instead be mnemonic devices, aiding wandering minstrels in memorizing tunes? Or are they something far older, remnants of a Pythagorean tradition that viewed geometry as the language of the divine? Then there's the Templar connection. Roslin's founders, the Sinclair family, were rumored to have ties to the Knights Templar, the medieval order allegedly exiled with sacred relics after their suppression in the 14th century. Among the chapel's carvings are unmistakable Templar motifs, a crucified knight, a fleet of ships resembling those used by the order, and even what some believe to be a depiction of the Ark of the Covenant. The cubes in this reading might encode directions to hidden treasures or lost knowledge. Freemasons, who later adopted Templar symbolism, interpret the designs as architectural blueprints, spiritual lessons disguised as stonework. One recurring pattern, a series of nested squares, mirrors the Masonic checkered floor, symbolizing the interplay of light and darkness. Astronomers, meanwhile, see a different story. The cube's configurations bear a striking resemblance to medieval astrolabe markings, used to chart celestial movements. Certain clusters align with constellations visible in Scotland's night sky during the chapel's construction, while others might trace planetary orbits known to scholars of the time. This wouldn't be unusual. Medieval builders often encoded cosmic alignments into sacred spaces, but Roslin's precision is uncanny. The apprentice pillar, adorned with serpentine carvings, casts shadows during solstices that intersect with specific cubes, as if guiding initiates through a ritual only the stars could unlock. Perhaps the most chilling theory comes from folklore. Local legends speak of the chapel's dark secret, a curse tied to disturbing its mysteries. Some carvings depict green men, faces sprouting vines, a motif linked to pagan rebirth rituals. Could the cubes be wards, protective sigils meant to seal away something best left untouched? The chapel's underground vaults, still unexplored due to fears of collapse, only fuel these whispers. Modern scans reveal cavities beneath the floor, their purpose unknown. What unites all these interpretations is the chapel's defiance of certainty. Roslin doesn't offer answers, it invites obsession. Every generation projects its own meaning onto those cubes, whether as musical notes, star charts, or treasure maps, and that's the genius of its design. Unlike deciphered codes, Roslin's carvings remain open-ended, a testament to humanity's endless hunger for mystery. They remind us that some messages aren't meant to be solved, only pondered, their meanings shifting like the Scottish fog that curls around the chapel's spires. In the hushed scriptoria of medieval Cistercian monasteries, where monks meticulously copied sacred texts by candlelight, an ingenious numerical system once flourished only to vanish into obscurity by the Renaissance. Unlike the Roman numerals still seen on clock faces or the Arabic digits we use today, Cistercian numerals were a marvel of efficiency, capable of representing any number from 1 to 9,999 using a single, elegant symbol. Picture this, a vertical stem like a staff with smaller marks branching off in 4 directions: right, left, above, and below. The position of each mark determined its value, while the shape distinguished units, tens, hundreds, and thousands. A diagonal stroke to the upper right might signify 3, while that same stroke mirrored to the lower left could mean 700. With just 9 basic shapes and their strategic placement, a monk could scribe a year, a quantity of grain, or a psalm verse in a fraction of the time it took to spell out Maxilvi. What made this system feel like a code wasn't just its compactness, it was its exclusivity. Cistercian numerals were largely confined to monastic use, a secret handshake among those who lived by the rule of Saint Benedict. Outsiders, even literate merchants or nobles, would have stared at these glyphs in bafflement, seeing mere ticks and dashes where initiates saw precise figures. The system's origins are shadowy, possibly inspired by earlier Greek shorthand or the tally marks of Celtic traders, but its refinement was pure medieval ingenuity. In an era when parchment was costly and every stroke of ink represented hours of labor, the Cistercian's numerical cipher was as practical as it was cryptic. The real brilliance lay in its adaptability. Unlike rigid numeral systems, Cistercian glyphs could be modified contextually. A scribe might curve a stroke to indicate a fractional value or double a line to mark a sacred number, like the 12 Apostles or the 40 days of Lent. Some manuscripts even wove numerals into decorative borders, hiding dates or quantities within illuminated vines, a form of mathematical steganography. When Cistercian monasteries communicated across Europe, from Clairvaux to Yorkshire, these symbols ensured their records remained standardized yet discreet, shielded from prying eyes. Yet by the 16th century, the system had all but disappeared, crushed under the twin wheels of the printing press and Arabic numerals' rising dominance. Today, only specialists recognize these cryptic notations, though their legacy lingers in unexpected places. Modern designers have noted eerie parallels between Cistercian numerals and QR codes. Both condense complex data into minimalist geometry. And in the digital age, where emojis and icons convey meaning across languages, the monk's system feels strangely prophetic. Perhaps its true lesson isn't about numbers at all, but about the timeless human urge to compress meaning into symbols, ensuring that knowledge endures even if only for a chosen few. In the chaotic battlefields of the 15th century, where the fate of kingdoms hinged on the strength of castle walls and the ingenuity of siege engines, one man devised a way to protect his deadly knowledge from falling into the wrong hands. Konrad Kaiser, a German military engineer exiled after fighting in the Crusades, filled his lavishly illustrated manual Belleforte's Latin for strong in war, with schematics for catapults, trebuchets, and even early gunpowder weapons. But hidden among these designs were something far more subtle: cryptic symbols and deliberate errors that acted as a medieval DRM system, ensuring only trusted allies could replicate his devastating inventions. The Belleforte's cipher wasn't a traditional code. Instead of scrambling letters, Kaiser manipulated the very blueprints themselves. A critical gear ratio might be inverted, a torsion spring's measurements slightly altered, or a component drawn backward, enough to doom any replica built by unauthorized hands. In one illustration of a siege tower, the treads of the climbing ladder are spaced just a finger's width too far apart, a mistake that would cause attackers to slip mid-assault. Another diagram for a dragon-shaped flamethrower omits the leather gaskets needed to prevent deadly fuel leaks. These weren't oversights, they were traps for the uninitiated, a way to sabotage rival armies while sharing knowledge among allies through oral corrections. What makes Kaiser's approach so fascinating is its psychological cunning. Unlike modern encryption, which relies on mathematical complexity, his cipher exploited human arrogance. Enemy engineers, confident in their ability to interpret technical drawings, would never suspect the flaws were intentional. Only those brought into Kaiser's circle would learn the verbal keys, perhaps a whispered phrase like "the raven's wing must curve east" to indicate how to adjust a ballista's arm. This blend of visual deception and oral tradition mirrored the guild secrets of medieval stonemasons, who similarly guarded their techniques through coded apprenticeships. The stakes couldn't have been higher. In an era where a single advanced weapon could tip a siege, Belleforte's was less a manual than a manifesto, a declaration that knowledge itself was a weapon to be strategically deployed. Kaiser even encrypted his more esoteric designs, like an alleged sun-ray death mirror, inspired by Archimedes, ensuring they remained theoretical rather than falling into reckless hands. His methods foreshadowed modern classification systems, proving that the urge to control destructive technology isn't a modern dilemma, but a timeless dance between innovation and caution. Yet for all its cleverness, the Belleforte's cipher had a fatal flaw. It relied on trust. Once the oral corrections spread beyond Caius's inner circle, the sabotage designs could be repaired, and indeed, later copies of the manual show earlier errors silently fixed. This vulnerability echoes today's struggles with digital piracy, reminding us that no cryptographic system is ever truly future-proof. Caius's legacy endures not in unbroken secrets, but in his audacious recognition that every great invention carries two edges, one for the wielder and one that must never be left unsheathed. High in the jagged peaks of Catalonia, the Montserrat monastery clings to the cliffs like a sentinel guarding ancient secrets. Within its vaulted archives, hidden among illuminated manuscripts and royal decrees, lies a collection of strange glyphs carved into the margins of parchments, symbols that defy translation and hint at a clandestine network of resistance against medieval oppression. Unlike typical monastic scribbles, these markings form no known alphabet. Some resemble twisted crosses, others abstract animal forms or celestial bodies linked by dotted lines. Their placement is deliberate, always near passages referencing taxation or feudal laws, as if the scribes were leaving breadcrumbs for those who knew how to read between the lines. The glyphs' origins trace back to the 15th century when Catalonia chafed under the rule of the Crown of Aragon. Monasteries like Montserrat weren't just spiritual centers, they were repositories of regional identity, often quietly opposing central authority. Here, the glyphs appear alongside suppressed texts advocating for Catalan autonomy, suggesting they might have served as covert communication among dissident monks. One recurring symbol, a crescent moon pierced by an arrow, mirrors the emblem of the Remences, peasant rebels fighting serfdom. Another, a tower with three flames, evokes the Flama del Canigo, a Catalan resistance symbol still used today. The parallels are too striking to dismiss as coincidence, but the real enigma lies in the glyph's structure. Linguists who have studied them note eerie similarities to Ziffrat, a medieval Catalan cipher used by merchants for trade secrets. Unlike simple substitution codes, Ziffrat relied on directional strokes. The angle of a line or the curve of a dot could change a symbol's entire meaning. Some glyphs in Montserrat's archives seem to follow this logic, with tiny variations transforming a sheep into a sword or a hymn into a call to arms. The most tantalizing clue, a half-erased marginal note in Latin, qui legit intelligat, let whoever reads understand. This phrase, borrowed from biblical passages about hidden truths, implies the glyphs were meant for initiates only. Modern historians speculate these symbols might encode everything from safe house locations to smuggling routes. During the Spanish Civil War, anti-fascist partisans reportedly used similar markings to coordinate in Montserrat's caves, suggesting an unbroken thread of cryptographic resistance. Yet without a key, the original glyphs remain mute. Recent efforts using spectral imaging have revealed previously invisible layers, faint charcoal sketches beneath the ink that might be early drafts or alternative cipher layers. One theory posits they're a hybrid system, blending Iberian pagan sigils with Christian iconography to create a language only the oppressed could decipher. What gives these glyphs enduring power isn't just their unsolved nature, it's their testament to the human instinct to resist through hidden knowledge. In an age where writing itself was controlled by the powerful, the monks of Montserrat carved their defiance into the very parchment meant to record their subjugation. Their symbols whisper across centuries, a reminder that some messages aren't just meant to be read, but to be recognized by those who still listen for the quiet language of rebellion. Buried within the vibrant pigments and gold leaf of the Cantino planisphere, a stunning 16th-century map charting Portugal's voyages of discovery lie faint pencil marks that defy the official narrative. To the casual observer, this map is a triumph of Renaissance cartography, its curling waves and monstrous sea creatures framing coastlines from Brazil to India. But look closer and you'll find cryptic annotations tucked between place names, tiny crosses, inverted compass roses, and sequences of numbers that don't align with any known navigational tables. These aren't accidents, they're deliberate omissions and corrections, hints that the scribes who copied this map for an Italian spy may have smuggled secrets under the noses of Portuguese authorities, secrets that could have rewritten the history of exploration. The context makes these marks even more tantalizing. The Cantino planisphere wasn't just any map, it was stolen intelligence, commissioned in 1502 by Alberto Cantino, an Italian diplomat secretly working for the Duke of Ferrara. The map was smuggled out of Lisbon at great risk. Portugal guarded its nautical charts like state secrets, punishing leaks with imprisonment or worse. Yet the anonymous scribe who copied the original not only replicated its coastlines but left behind subtle clues. Along the coast of Africa, a cluster of crosses marks bays absent from other maps of the era, possibly uncharted harbors used for clandestine trade. Near the Caribbean, a series of numbers in minuscule script could denote magnetic declination values the Portuguese had painstakingly calculated but hadn't publicly revealed. The most provocative anomaly lies in Brazil. While official maps of the time depicted the coastline only as far south as present-day Rio, the Cantino planisphere shows a faint, unfinished curve extending further, as if the cartographer knew more than they dared commit to ink. This aligns with persistent rumors that Portuguese explorers had secretly rounded the tip of South America decades before Magellan, discovering the strait that would bear his name. Were these half-drawn lines a cautious nod to forbidden knowledge, scrubbed from the final version but left visible to those who knew where to look? Decoding these marks requires understanding the perilous dance of Renaissance mapmaking. Scribes often worked under strict oversight, their quills scratching out copies while officials watched for deviations. To circumvent this, some developed covert annotation systems. A dot near a river might indicate freshwater sources, while a zigzag in the margin could warn of shoals omitted from the official record. The Cantino scribe may have used similar tricks, embedding truths in plain sight. Infrared scans reveal even more, erased notes in the margins, possibly detailing winds or currents the Portuguese had monopolized to outpace rival ships. What's at stake isn't just historical trivia. If these marks confirm suppressed discoveries, they append the Eurocentric timeline of exploration. The faint lines in Brazil hint at indigenous knowledge incorporated into Portuguese charts, while the African annotations suggest sailors were relying on Arab or Swahili pilots' expertise long before credit was given. The Cantino planisphere, then, isn't just a map. It's a palimpsest of hidden collaborations and stolen wisdom, its margins whispering the names of the forgotten guides and informants who truly shaped the age of discovery. Yet the greatest secret may be the simplest, that the era's most prized maps were never wholly accurate but living documents edited and encoded to serve power. The Cantino scribe's defiance, leaving traces of truth in the cracks, reminds us that even in the most controlled of worlds, knowledge finds a way to slip through. Today, as scholars pore over these marks with spectral imaging and machine learning, we're not just chasing shadows on parchment. We're reclaiming voices silenced by history, one barely visible stroke at a time. Beneath the soaring arches of Europe's medieval cathedrals, hidden in plain sight among the stonework and stained glass, lies a secret language of power, the emblems of craft guilds. These weren't just decorative flourishes, a mason's chisel mark on a cornerstone, a weaver's unique knot embroidered into a tapestry's edge, or a blacksmith's stamp on a wrought iron gate. Each symbol was a cipher, broadcasting status, authenticity, and guarded knowledge to those who could read them. Guild seals were more than signatures. They were a visual shorthand for entire systems of apprenticeship, techniques, and even political alliances. Crack their code, and you'd unlock the hidden hierarchy of medieval industry. Take the stonemason's marks, simple geometric designs chiseled into the blocks of churches like Chartres or Cologne Cathedral. At first glance, they look like primitive signatures, but their true purpose was astonishingly complex. Each mark identified not just the craftsman, but their rank within the guild, the year they achieved mastery, and even the specific quarry that supplied their stone. A triangle with a horizontal line might denote a journeyman from the Paris region, while the same symbol with a dot signaled a master who'd contributed to 3 major projects. These weren't arbitrary. Guilds maintained meticulous mark books to prevent forgeries, treating them with the same gravity as royal seals. In an era before formal diplomas, your mark was your resume and your lifeline to future work. The secrecy extended to techniques encoded in symbols shared only among initiates. The Comakine Masters, a legendary guild of Lombard builders, left behind cryptic carvings of compasses interlocked with hammers, a visual recipe for the precise mortar mixes used in their famed earthquake-resistant arches. Glassmakers in Venice embedded spiral motifs in their furnace bricks, representing the exact number of rotations needed to stir molten silica for optimal clarity. Even textile guilds had their own visual ciphers. A single misplaced thread in a Flemish tapestry's border could indicate which dye vat produced the crimson hue, allowing competitors to reverse engineer coveted recipes. But guild emblems also held darker, ritualistic layers. Admission to these societies wasn't merely about skill. It involved elaborate initiation rites, many of which borrowed symbolism from alchemy and astrology. The ironworkers of Nuremberg required apprentices to carve a living mark, a design that incorporated their birth star's position relative to Mars, believed to temper metal as surely as a forge. Masonic lodges preserved even more esoteric traditions, with vaulted ceilings painted with zodiacal maps that doubled as coded blueprints for sacred geometry. To the uninitiated, these were pretty decorations. To members, they mapped the path from laborer to master, with each symbol representing a step in both craft and spiritual refinement. The guild's cryptographic prowess reached its peak in their legal battles. When rival cities or nobility tried to poach artisans, guilds responded with seal wars, issuing counterfeit marks to sabotage competitors' reputations. A single forged blacksmith stamp on subpar armor could tank a rival town's trade, while secretly altering the spacing between a wool guild's emblematic fleece motifs might signal an embargo on certain merchants. These were high-stakes games where symbols held the power to build fortunes or ruin them. Ironically, the very secrecy that protected guild knowledge hastened its decline. As the Renaissance dawned and printing democratized information, the obsessive guarding of techniques became a liability. A German locksmith's guild famously vanished because its masters refused to document their spring mechanisms, taking irreplaceable designs to their graves. Yet echoes of these medieval ciphers persist. Modern trademarks, union insignias, even the QR codes on factory products, all descend from those first defiant scratches of a mason's chisel, proclaiming to the future, "We were here and we knew things worth hiding." Even after centuries of relentless scholarship, a handful of monastic ciphers still guard their secrets, codes scribbled into the margins of illuminated manuscripts, etched onto wax tablets or hidden within liturgical chants. These aren't just linguistic puzzles, they're time capsules from an era when writing itself was considered divine, and knowledge was a sacred trust. Take the enigmatic Liber Viginti Artium, a 12th century manuscript from Clairvaux Abbey, filled with geometric diagrams and strings of letters that resemble no known cipher system. Scholars have tried everything from frequency analysis to AI-driven pattern recognition, yet its symbols refuse to yield. Some believe it's a theological treatise encrypted to protect heresies, while others argue it's a failed experiment in symbolic logic, a medieval attempt to invent a universal language centuries before Esperanto. What makes these unbroken codes so compelling isn't just their defiance of modern tools, it's the human stories frozen within them. In a Swiss monastery's ledger from 1423, a single page is covered in mirror writing and odd astrological signs. Carbon stains suggest the scribe burned other notes, leaving this one as a deliberate clue. Was it a monk recording forbidden astronomical observations or a desperate plea for help during the plague? The emotional weight of these mysteries pulls researchers deeper. At Spain's Montserrat Abbey, a team recently discovered minuscule ink dots under ultraviolet light, dots forming constellations that match no known medieval sky charts. Could they mark the date of an apocalyptic prediction or coordinates to a hidden relic? The race to crack these ciphers has spurred unlikely collaborations. Cryptographers now work alongside medievalists, chemists, and even musicians. One breakthrough came when a scholar realized that nonsense syllables in a 15th century antiphonary weren't lyrics but cipher keys. When sung to a specific Gregorian melody, the notes corresponded to a substitution alphabet. Elsewhere, X-ray fluorescence revealed erased undertext in a French psalter, exposing a palimpsest of political gossip encrypted in Latin acronyms. These multidisciplinary approaches hint at a tantalizing truth. Medieval scribes often layered their codes, combining visual, textual, and even musical elements to outwit potential interceptors. But why do these puzzles still captivate us? Partly because they're mirrors of their time. A codex from Canterbury Cathedral contains shipping records scrambled with nautical symbols, evidence of monks trading secrets with Viking merchants under the guise of piety. Another, hidden in a Welsh gospel book, lists herbal remedies in Ogham script, a Celtic cipher likely used to shield pagan knowledge from purges. Each unbroken cipher is a snapshot of fear, ingenuity, or subversion, proving that medieval Europe was far more complex than textbooks suggest. The most poignant might be the sorrowful cipher, a single line of symbols scribbled beneath a prayer for the dead in a Bohemian monastery's ledger. It surfaces only in 1484, the year a local heretic sect was massacred. No key has ever been found, but the handwriting shakes as if penned in haste or grief. Is it a victim's final words or a tally of the lost? Until someone deciphers it, the line remains a silent scream across the centuries. What keeps scholars pressing forward isn't just the thrill of solving riddles, it's the promise of hearing voices history tried to silence. Every cracked code rewrites our understanding of faith, power, and resistance in the Middle Ages. And for those that still hold out, their endurance is a testament to the scribes who crafted them. Masters of ink and secrecy who knew some truths are too dangerous to write plain. What makes these 30 unsolved codes so captivating isn't just their defiance of modern decipherment, it's the window they offer into the medieval mind. These puzzles weren't created in a vacuum. They were born from a world where knowledge was power, where words could be weapons, and where scribes wielded quills like locksmiths crafting intricate gates to guard their secrets. Each cipher, whether etched into stone or hidden in the margins of a manuscript, carries the fingerprints of its creator, a thinker who dared to encode truths too dangerous, too sacred, or too personal to leave unguarded. When we strain to unravel their meanings, we're not just solving riddles, we're reaching across centuries to grasp the hopes, fears, and ingenuity of people who lived in a universe utterly unlike our own. Consider the sheer diversity of these enigmas. From the labyrinthine glyphs of the Rohonc Codex to the whimsical loops of the Dorabella Cipher, they reflect the full spectrum of medieval life. Some were crafted by monks preserving heretical ideas under the watchful eyes of the church. Others were the work of spies, alchemists, or love-struck poets, each leaving behind a challenge meant to bewilder or enlighten future generations. What unites them is their refusal to surrender, their insistence on whispering to us from the shadows of history, daring us to listen more closely. The allure lies in what they represent, the uncharted corners of human creativity. In an age before algorithms and satellites, these scribes devised encryption methods so clever they still stump supercomputers. The Voynich Manuscript's botanical riddles, the Liber Linteus linen-bound secrets, the Templar markings on Oak Island, they all testify to a time when innovation wasn't just about invention but about concealment. To crack one of these codes wouldn't just solve a puzzle, It would rewrite a fragment of history, revealing lost technologies, suppressed beliefs, or emotions too intimate for their era. But perhaps the real magic isn't in the solving, it's in the hunt. These mysteries invite us to become detectives, to lean in and scrutinize every stroke of ink, every chisel mark, every odd symbol that doesn't quite fit. They remind us that history isn't a static record but a living conversation, one where we're still trading questions with the past. Maybe you'll be the one to spot a pattern everyone else missed or stumble upon a fresh clue buried in an archive. The adventure doesn't end here. Dive deeper, share your theories below, and if you're hungry for more historical enigmas, join us as we keep unraveling the threads of time, one unsolved cipher